Alright, so I'm going to make this video short and sweet. We're going to talk about Obama because in the wake of him no longer being president, he has pretty much decided to just sit back at one of his two multi-million-dollar homes with his Secret Service and his millions of dollars that he makes from taxpayers and the millions of dollars he made while he was president from taxpayers and who knows who else. And he's willing to just sit back and be a good, respectful ex-president and you know, just keep his mouth shut on his opinions, right? No, he has not. In fact, he's out there on a speaking tour while his wife is on a book tour, and he's out there basically just continuing to talk shit about conservatism, about Republicans, about the Constitution, about the Bill of Rights, and do everything he possibly can to trash these individuals and these foundations of our government so that he can basically degrade anything that somebody who says they're more right-leaning or conservative or Republican or whatever, he can just say that they're just a bunch of ignorant people because they believe in all these weird racist things like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So don't listen to them, listen to me, because I'm progressive, right? That's basically what he's going around and doing. And recently, I believe it was in Houston, but I'm not quite sure on that, but it doesn't really matter, but he was at a speaking event and he was being interviewed and it was painful to listen to, but at a certain point he started talking about the 3/5 clause. And this is, from a guy who was supposed to be studying constitutional law in law school, it's just infuriating because either he's a complete moron or he is just willfully misleading the public so that everybody will only agree with him, and he wants to continue to degrade and denigrate the Constitution and conservatism and anybody who actually believes in true freedom and liberty for the individual, right? And I think, of course, the answer is the latter. I don't think he's stupid. I think he's intentionally going around and spreading lies because he understands what the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the founders, and he understands the history of the political movements in this country. Of course he does. I believe he is an intelligent man when it comes to those types of things, but of course he has his own bias and he's willing to lie to the American people, as he did for 8 years as president and continue to do it today, just like what we're about to talk about. So he gets to this 3/5 clause and starts talking about how racist it was and how ridiculous it is that conservatives and anybody on the right and Republicans look up to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the founders and all these individuals and institutions that ultimately led to the 3/5 clause, where black people weren't even considered whole people, and it's so horrible and evil and racist, right? That's what he's going on about. Of course, this is absolutely ridiculous because it's just not true, and you would think a constitutional lawyer and the first black president of the United States would understand and appreciate the 3/5 clause for what it was, because the 3/5 clause only had to do with the census. It didn't have to do with human rights, constitutional rights, anything else. It had to do with the census. And what was the 3/5 clause, by the way, for those that don't understand what it was? Yes, it was where all these new millions of free slaves down in the South were only considered 3/5 of a human being. That sounds horrible, it sounds awful, but why? Why were they only considered 3/5 of a human being? Millions of new citizens who had constitutional rights, but on paper with the census only considered 3/5 of a human being? Why would these evil racists do that? Well, because they were all still living in the South. And what is the census used for? Well, it's used to determine representation in our government. And if all of a sudden there are millions and millions of new citizens living in the South, what does that mean according to our Constitution? Well, it means that they will get new representation down there. And can you imagine millions of people being forced into the South right after the Civil War, where they're still full of a bunch of racist Democrats, and all of a sudden they have, who knows, 10, 20, 40, 100 new representatives down there representing them in the federal government, and all of a sudden the racists from the South have more representation in our federal government, in Congress, than the non-racists in the North. And now they can start to pass racist laws, federal laws, that affect everybody. This is why the 3/5 clause was put into effect, to ensure that the South, the racist South, okay, didn't get overrepresented in our government so that they could then just straight up through Congress pass more racist laws. It's that simple. And anybody in this country who doesn't understand that needs to go back to school. Okay? It was a good thing. Did it suck that on some piece of paper somewhere in our government we had to say that black people only represented 3/5 of a human being? Yes, that's a bad thing. It doesn't sound good. It sounds awful. But what it did was ensure that, yes, it took a while, but it ensured that we didn't go back to slavery and we kept slowly progressing towards equal rights. It was a necessary step. It sucks that we had to say that black people are only worth 3/5 of a human being, but it kept the South from taking over our federal government. It had to be done, period. And Obama knows this. Of course he does, but he hates the Constitution. He hates conservatives. He hates the founders. He hates Republicans. So he has to lie. He has to lie to get his point across. So I'll just say this. Obama, you miserable piece of shit, thank God you're no longer in office. Go fuck yourself.